What the?
All right, welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from Goethe Film Reviews.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks again for finding us. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing and telling all your friends about the show. You can contact the show on Twitter and Instagram. Today, we're going to talk about one of the horror cult classics of the 80s. But nothing is on, everything is on the menu. Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
Everything's on the menu. Blood Diner.
Blood Diner. So, brothers Michael and George run a popular health food diner, but their patrons do not know that this eatery is a front for their true goal, a cannibalistic ritual to bring forth the ancient goddess Sheetar. Aided by their undead uncle Anwar, the brothers prep for their ritual by collecting virgin body parts for their bloody buffet, all the while evading detectives hot on their trail.
Just for a little more clarity, it's not everything is on the menu. The tagline is nothing is off the menu.
No.
If you want to talk cult classics, usually one of the top cult classics of the 80s is Repo Man.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one of the top horror classics of the 80s is Blood Diner.
Interesting.
What a great, effective way to use your fog machine. Is it constantly on throughout the whole movie? I think it's
not really what jumped out at me. I just want the side story about the fake dummy that sits in the other diner. But no, so for those of you that don't know, I became aware of this film actually kind of through a series of random encounters. I picked up Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood trilogy from the 60s, and that included one of his most famous films, Blood Feast, which runs out just over an hour. And that film is the basis, if you will, for Blood Diner. Blood Diner was seen originally as a sequel to Blood Feast. Before production began, they changed their mind and decided to just do it as kind of an inspiration to the film. And it ends up being, in a lot of ways, very much a remake or reimagining of that original film. You've got your people collecting body parts to make a Egyptian goddess come to life, having a bloody buffet or bloody like dinner that they kind of put together. It's a very loose retelling of that kind of same situation. I expected it to be more in line with Blood Feast, with more of the carnage level like murders and kind of being more straight-laced towards horror, even if it's silly. This one goes more towards Peter Jackson.
High octane. It's high octane fast food, which I like it because there's a diner in the name. It's high octane fast food horror.
Yep. And
if you didn't know, if you're for horror experts on films, Blood Feast is actually considered one of the first splatter films. Mm-hmm. We used to call it, now we call it gore porn or something like that, but it's kind of the marker for splattery. That would drip over to what we talked about with Bay of Blood as the previous step. It looks like the fog machine was on all the time. Mm-hmm. It's very much a rock concert. I'm surprised a lot of events happen outside the diner than I thought. I thought it would be a little more concentrated inside the diner, but there's not a lot of scenes inside the diner.
Yeah, and again, like knowing about Blood Feast and having seen that film a few times and then kind of coming into it, I had these preconceived ideas about what this movie was going to be, or at least what it might be, or what it could be.
Right. You get. I mean, even if you pick it up, you know what you're getting into, right?
But I don't think we knew what we were getting into, Nick. Like
a catalyst, right?
I knew we were going to get the Blood Diner, the eponymous one. I knew we were going to get a cannibalistic ritual. I assumed. I didn't know that they were going to go full Egyptian goddess Sheetar.
You didn't know we were going to have like topless cheerleaders practicing?
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't think the detectives would be that stupid. The detectives are stupid in Blood Feast, but they're not that stupid as they are in this film. And I also didn't expect there to be so much, how do I put this, like giant floating brains with eyes and genital mutilation, if you will.
So, my phrase is, they don't mind grabbing the low-hanging fruit. They're going to really...
Or cutting it off.
Or cutting it off. They're going to throw everything out there and see if it sticks or not.
Yeah,
and really, the title fits with it. They're going to throw it out the wall and see if it lands or not, and we move on.
Well, this is apparently one of Jackie Kong's 4 films. She's known... this is the first time I've seen a feature of hers. She's known for having this kind of over-the-top insanity. And I think this is her only truly straight-laced horror film. She's got some some dark thriller comedies and some just laugh out loud kind of comedies. But this is the one where she really went in, and it's seen as her most important ludicrous film. Yeah. And I gotta say, this is a bad movie, but there are several better made movies that we've talked about on the show that I would rather watch.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense because it recognizes that it's going to be an awful movie, and it does a lot of things that mistakes. You don't do it as a camera person of just setting the camera and have the action almost off camera, like where are you going? And it's almost intentionally known that you're making a bad movie.
Yeah.
And to enjoy it. There's a lot of times where I almost thought the character was just gonna say the lines like, I can't believe I said that line out loud, and then like wink at it.
Yeah, like you'd get like a shot to shot where like the person receiving that line reacted in the way that we as the audience would have reacted.
But it's a caricature, almost like Night of the Creeps. Mm-hmm. It's a caricature of like 50s, blended a little bit, not as hit over the head with it as Night of the Creeps, but a little more touches of like 50s diners.
Yeah, there's less of a level head. Like going towards that specific influence. I do think that Blood Feast had influences on this film. But this is very much like Jackie Kong doing what Peter Jackson did best with his splatstick films. Right. You know, Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles and Dead Alive. Like
Dead Alive.
This was done before that. And I don't know if you had a Blood Diner, if you might have had as much, you know, as that influence.
You're right. I don't think if you had this movie, Peter Jackson would have got along with what he was doing. Yeah, not with the consistency that he did. Because, of course, he came from a different place, but without a film like this, I don't think Bad Taste or Dead Alive would have made their way across to the States. You know? It's ridiculous fodder. We enjoy it. Like I said, all movies, some of them are long to digest. Mm-hmm. This one's completely fast food, just like a burger and fries. They eat it, and then you're done with your day, and you're like, what the hell was that? Yep, and this might be the first, I can't remember offhand, but this might be the first truly so bad it's good movie we've talked about on the show. I think so. Because Night of the Creeps is actually an effective good movie. Yeah, I mean, and you know, even like Bay of Blood has, we kind of talked with Bay of Blood about how it's the kind of movie that you'd have more fun with a group of people, and everyone's betting who's going to make it out. You know, really getting the, you know, but this is the one where it's really embracing badness in a way that none of those films have done before. And even, you know, going back as far as the last season when we talked about The Keep. The Keep, I think, is a genuinely well-made movie that just kind of got meddled with and turned out worse because of it. But I enjoy watching The Keep, and I think that The Keep has true elements of greatness. This is a bad movie. Right. And I love it for it. I think if you were on set and worked with Jackie, we could do this, or we can do this, and this is really stupid. And she'd go, let's do it. Yeah. And I think we have to recognize that she stayed true to what her vision was, because she's made 4 movies, and they all have this kind of wackiness to them. But it's incredibly rare, especially in the 80s, to have a female director or to have an Asian director working on your film. And I think so getting both of those, and to literally do what she came on this earth to do. Right. We got to recommend that. Like I said, don't think make your movie. Mm-hmm. Make it, you know, don't worry about what other people say. Stick to what you enjoy. And a lot of people are shocked that this is what Jackie wants to do with her life. But this is what you want to do. Yeah, right. And you and I have both watched her interviews on In Search of Darkness. Yes. The documentaries that are on Shudder right now. And she's just she is celebrating that she created this movie. She's proud of this work. And I'm not saying that means you have to like it, but this is what she was supposed to do. Like, she came here to make these kinds of movies for the smallest sec. She's kind of like a Kevin Smith 10 years earlier, where she just, like, she had her vision, and she's not looking to make friends. She's not looking to make you love her movie. You either love it or you don't. Right. And I hate this movie, but I kind of love it too. So like I said, work on your style, work on what works for you. Don't worry about the masses, or don't worry about writing. Like I said, Jackie's not going to work with safe. There's a lot of exploitative things in this movie, of nudity just to be nudity, and she doesn't care. Wait, are you talking about the scene with the naked aerobics and the camera person is naked? Yeah, and you get a shotgun blast to them, and then you got like a electric cutter on a rear end and all that stuff. So yeah, I never would have thought that I'd be comparing the movie Blood Diner to Point Break with its ability to use ex-presidents, but it does. Right? Yeah, Ronald Reagan. And there's an intense of Ronald. There's a reason why there's a Ronald Reagan mask with a shotgun, and this is definitely stuck in the 80s. This is an 80s staple. I think. All the things about 80s, a little bit of nostalgia of the 60s and all that stuff, but the super haircuts and then the styles and the exploitative and really going out there and really amping it up. In the 80s, what's marker is nothing was done with subtle. Nothing was done in subtle, and Jackie's taken that idea and just went up to extreme. Yeah. Yeah, with costuming, with the hair, with dialogue, with everything else. Yeah. Yeah, and it's got that freshman, maybe sophomore approach to the film, where you know that it's not
it's not intentionally. I don't think it's intentionally supposed to be as bad as it is. I just think that she's got that level of
I don't care.
kind of youngerness where she's more focused on what can be displayed on screen. And it's too bad because I think the film would be more accessible had it leaned into certain accessibility issues. But I think that's what she decided to do, and she paid for that by only making 4 movies then. You know, she did not transcend directors with that issue.
There's a lot of things, and I would say, I don't know if it's intentionally, but there's a lot of things that you don't do in film. It's a lot of flat camera work. So even like the wall is right here, and you just have the camera there. And so it's a little condensed filming that you're really not supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think she cares. The only time you really get depth is when you go to the rock concert, but she wants to show everything.
Yeah, there's a lot on display in that part of the movie. Wow, that is love it or hate it, that ending is what this movie probably needed.
Right, but it's a little more condensed, even for a cult movie. Even like Repo Man is an effect of like a lot of scope and a lot of depth to it. But here it is really compact.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's intentional or she just doesn't care.
Yeah, it has that specific look of, if this wasn't full of nudity and violence, this would have been a TV movie, you know? Something like on Sci-Fi in the 80s. It has that flavor to it, but just you'd never be able to put this movie in this version. I feel like this movie might be 10 minutes long if you put it on TV.
Which is another thing like Alfred Hitchcock did for Psycho. He got his TV crew to film that movie, so it almost looks like you're watching a TV show, which makes it a more shocking of a reveal of what you're going to see. Almost like, oh my God, that's I'm watching a TV show. And it's not really more of a movie. Where here, I think she's almost like it's a Saturday night TV special, but it's got nudity and gratuitous violence into it.
Yep. You heard it here, folks. Nick just compared Blood Diner to Hitchcock. I want you to cut that out, and I want you to post it all over Twitter.
You don't get this movie without Psycho either, because that's kind of the start of the splatter blood, and that got the evolutionary step to Blood Feast, and now you got Blood Diner.
That's true. There you go. You know what? I'm going to join you on this. I'm going to elaborate. Psycho made you feel like you were wrong for watching the gore.
Yeah.
This movie says, you're in my book. You're allowed to be in this movie and watch this gore.
I think if you go to the horror conventions, Krypton, they wear a Blood Diner, people are like,
people get it.
I know it's up. Right?
Yeah. So really, when it comes down to it, the limited theatrical release for this movie, and the fact that it was banned in parts of Canada for good taste, and that it existed on VHS for a little while. We talked about this movie. You actually messaged me saying, I can't find a copy of this movie.
Really?
Thankfully, I had one, lent it to you, but my copy even was a 6-pack of movies. So like,
it is an adventure to go get.
This is not an easy one to find. I think right now Vestron Video has a pretty solid release of the movie, and thankfully DVD and Blu-ray have made the uncut version accessible, because the really cut down version of the film is kind of criticized for being like, you're taking a movie that celebrates the violence and gore, and you're cutting out the violence and gore. So it's a tough movie to find. If you can get your hands on it,
I think you can find Night Patrol, her other movie with Linda Blair, much more easy than this one. Yeah. And this one is far more celebrated in.
Yeah, that's kind of the weird thing about it. It's one of those movies that it's kind of like the Golden Idol, that Indiana Jones is looking for. That as a horror fan, you get that moment, and hopefully your bag of sand is the right, weight.
Next time I go to a HorrorCon, and if I see somebody has a VH copy of this, and I don't have a VCR anymore, I'm still buying the VH copy for this.
Okay. Yeah. I'll take the VCR.
Like I said, the video store, I don't think we had this in the video store, but I think it was probably available to rent probably like in 88 and 87. It just, you had to go to the not the corporate video stores, the mom and pop video stores to find it.
Yep, you had to really do some digging, and I think that's what makes the film special, is that when you find it, you do get to have those moments, that like we can celebrate. And I think horror fans appreciate hunting for a film more than any other fan, because when horror movies tend to get that kind of like word of mouthness that most other genres don't get. I mean, because the Oscars celebrates big budget everything else except for horror movies, they tend to get let out of the Oscars. Yeah. So if you don't have that as a person, and horror movies make money, but they don't make billions of dollars. So you kind of have to have like a word of mouth for your genre to survive. Yeah. And word of mouth is the only reason Blood Diner is still around, because it was practically buried at the theater. It was practically buried on home video. And like you said, it wasn't at your video store, probably wasn't at most video stores.
No, it's hard. It's hard to find. Right, you're gonna have to do some archaeologically digging to get your own copy to find it. But like I said, it's almost one of those things. If you love horror movies, it's one of those things that it's a staple that you're gonna have to see eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember like when I was lending it to you, because I'd watched it first, and I was like, "You take this, and then we'll talk about it." And in my head, I was like, I can't believe what I just saw. Like, I can't, and I need to tell someone about it. My wife refused to watch the movie with me, so I needed to have somebody else that had seen this that I could actually discuss with it.
But I think it's one of the first movies that you have a brain in a jar with eyeballs that has vocal cords and speaks to you. Because that's been used after this.
Well, there was the brain that wouldn't die, but I don't know if we ever saw, like, the disembodied brain in that movie. It's been so long since I've watched that.
No. I tell you what, it's a heavy exposition brain in a jar. That's what.
Yeah, that's true. You know, more power to you, Anwar, even though he's probably...
You're dead, but right, yeah. Exposition dump brain in a jar.
Yeah. You know, I think more movies could probably go with that. You know, there's some movies that don't have any exposition, and maybe just add a brain in the jar. But
that's the comedic point, because he just set the camera and just have it watch the brain in the jar, but he's shouting at everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
What I appreciate, too, is that, again, the script and Jackie Kong's direction, I think are very aware from the get-go what kind of movie they're trying to make.
Yeah.
And then you have this element of the police are looking for this killer, and the mom just leaves her kids at home in the opening. Yeah, and then the killer comes through the door, sans genitals, and
he doesn't even knock.
And they're like, it's our uncle, and he chopped down the door. So it's like, from moment one, you know what this movie is going to be, and I got to appreciate that. It's not trying to convince you to watch it. From moment one, you know what you're getting.
I think at the beginning that it need to break through to the door. It's almost a metaphor of what you're going to get to watch. It's just going to break into it.
What was the deal with doors in the 80s? They were so cheap. I'm just saying. Doors were cheap in the 80s. That thing was particle.
Right. Yeah, Jason Voorhees knows that.
Yeah.
But right, it's the beginning of the movie. Like, we're going to burst into your life, deal with it, and this is what I am, and then we're going to go from there.
Yeah.
But right, it's an enjoyable movie. I don't know if I want to watch it again.
I think I will eventually. The thing is, I guess I was hoping, because I mentioned to you before we started, this poster is incredible. This is one of my all-time favorite horror movie posters.
It better be the poster he's talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's a great poster. Even if I never got a chance to watch this movie and that poster was available, I'd put it on my wall because I just love it so much. I was hoping to have the same reaction to the movie. The movie has taken some time to stew with me, because the first time I watched it, I was like, I thought it was really bad, but kind of good and kind of enjoyable. And the more time I've sat with it, the more I'm like, I should watch it again, though. You know, because it does kind of like call out to me and say, Kyle, go to McDonald's, come back, and watch Blood Diner.
That's pretty much what the environment is.
And I kind of think that's perfect for what this movie is. I don't think I'll go back to it immediately, but it's the kind of movie I'm going to want to show to other people with the fair warning. It's going to be bad.
And then you got to do, like, the fog machine's on, drink.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because I did this one on Go Film Reviews. I wrote this thing 7 years ago, I think, about Birdemic, where I gave the film a 1 out of 5, and I said it's an awful movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then I gave a little asterisk, and I said, but I loved how bad this movie is. And I have watched Birdemic on almost a yearly basis since I first saw it, because that movie is so terrible, and yet there's something so special about watching a movie that is that completely bonkers and bad.
Right.
That's kind of how I feel about this. It's the kind of movie I'll probably go back to with the intention of enjoying it, like Bay of Blood, even though I think Bay of Blood is probably a better movie. But I would go back to this over films like Climax. I would go back to this over films like Braid. I would go back maybe before Daniel Isn't Real. Like these other movies we've talked about in the past where they're like...
just have a burger and fries and a milkshake and just watch stupid.
Exactly. I love me some stupid.
What I think is the charm about this, and I'm really going to be really honest with you, I think because Jackie put her soul into it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's awful, it's bad technically, and it's bad dialogue, she genuinely enjoyed making this movie, and she put a little bit of soul in, and we get to see it. It's projected out there that she loved to do this, and everybody had a good time doing it.
Well,
and that kind of plays out to it.
My rule for an auteur is, if you watch their movie, could you say that this is a Jackie Kong movie?
Yeah.
And I that's why I've always defended Michael Bay as an auteur. You might not like his movies, but you can watch them knowing they're Michael Bay movies.
Like
that's
Richard
the same
Donner.
Way this one is too. Yeah, Richard Donner's the same way, and especially if you can do multiple genres, like what Jackie Kong has done, and you can watch one and say, I better check. I think this is her. Like, that means that she has the vision. It just may not be your vision.
Right. She has her style. She has what she's not going to play it safe,
mm-hmm.
and she's going to put her soul to it. That's all three ingredients that I enjoy about a creator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And the ironic thing about Blood Diner is that the film started out as a Blood Feast sequel, then it changed into Inspired By, and it kind of ended up as a remake of Blood Feast. And the really strange thing is, Blood Feast, after this movie came out, got a sequel and got a remake 40 years later.
It's almost like Little Shop of Horrors story, where you make that movie, it's a bad movie, then it turned into a musical, and then they want to make a movie about the musical, and Roger Corman's like, hey, that's my original movie. I'll make the musical version of my...
Yeah. So it's kind of like, you know, there's that level of Blood Feast will never go away, Blood Diner will never go away, and it's going to keep permeating, and I think if you can just have fun with the material, you might enjoy yourself. And I won't say that everyone's going to love this movie, but if you come across a copy of it, check it out.
And I say, if you're a horror fan, it has to be part of your archives of knowledge of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
So if you say, oh, I love horror movies, and you say, what about Blood Diner? And if you go, I've never seen that,
yeah. I'm convinced. Nick forgot to bring it back. I'm convinced he's going to watch it again.
Probably will.
Yep.
But after I went to McDonald's. All right. Have you seen Blood Diner?
Yeah. Let us know what kind of.
Or have you eaten there?
Yeah. Like what did you eat while you watched it? I had gummy bears. I'm gonna be real with you. I had gummy bears the first time. It was the morning, and I just wanted a snack. So let us know what your food choice for Blood Diner was, and do you think it's better, worse than, or equal to Blood Feast? We want to know that down in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to check out the Patreon. Like Nick pointed out, we have tiers as low as $1. But at the next level up from there, you can actually pick some of the films we talk about. You can influence some of the choices that we make on the show. If you really loved Blood Diner and you want us to talk more movies like that, this is your opportunity.
Night Patrol and The Being, we can go on there, right?
Or if you really hate Blood Diner and you don't want us to talk about it anymore, join the Patreon. Tell us something else. And while you're down there as well, like, subscribe, comment, share. You know we're going to ask it every single time, but it's one of the free ways that you can help support the channel and help us out, which helps you out because you get more great content. So that's all the time we have today, folks. You can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and serve it up rare.